The Islamic group Hizbut Tahrir, also known as the Khalifa Muslims, are a scourge on the world. They're a global Islamist organization which wants to bring back the Islamist way of life with the construction of a caliphate. They believe this call extends to the entire world. They were recently trying to book their annual conference in Mississauga, Ontario, and for the first time in 2025, they were called out by the mayor as not welcome. I'm going to share my experiences with this group, which go all the way back to my days as Muslim in university, tell you how they operate, what seems to have changed now with the political climate, and why I despise them. Let's get into it. Before I tell you about Hizbut Tahrir, also known as HT, I wanted to share this article about the troubling rise of radicalization here in Canada. So as you can see here, Canadians as young as 12 are being drawn to extremist views, Mountie ones, that's the RCMP, the federal police force that we have. When RCMP Superintendent Jean-Guy Isaiah first started as a police officer 20 years ago, school outreach involved drug safety programs. Now the Mountie says there's a growing need to talk to kids about violent extremism, and the trend is certainly continuing and doesn't want to disappear. It's why the RCMP and Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, along with the Five Eyes intelligence and law enforcement agencies, put out a report earlier this month warning about the rising prominence of young people who are attracted to violent ideologies. So what we're seeing here is that we do have to worry about our kids. And let's talk about Hizbut Tahrir now. The Quilliam Foundation, a de-radicalization group, has this current view of Hizbut Tahrir. Non-violent Islamists can champion this narrative, providing the mood music to which suicide bombers dance. Quilliam also states that those such as Hizbut Tahrir continue to advocate separatist, confrontational ideas that follow to the logical conclusion lead to violence. This is a great point. Although Hizbut Tahrir officially disavows terrorism, the radical ideas can serve as a gateway drug to more violent extremism. The ideology overlaps with that of groups such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda, particularly in the desire for a caliphate, although the methods differ. Let's look at the promo video for the Islamic conference they're having, because that'll tell you all you need to know about them.
Over the past 100 years, in the absence of the Khilafah, the Ummah has been tested with death, destruction, dishonor, and destitution. We have suffered from ruthless colonial wars, the tyranny of secular regimes backed by the colonial powers in the Muslim lands, brutal occupations and genocides. Going from a state ruled by Islam, under which the Muslims brought light and guidance to humanity, to what we witness today makes many ask, when will the victory of Allah come? In fact, it is forbidden to despair in the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam foretold the re-establishment of the Khilafah and the dominance of this deen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised us the victory, and we have a Sharia from Him that clearly guides us on how to restore the Khilafah. Finally, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that when the believers stand for the Haqq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test them with trials and tribulations. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba radiallahu anhu themselves had suffered from Quraysh's oppression, yet they did not despair. They knew that while their road was difficult, they were only getting closer to the victory of Allah. Despite all the oppression and suffering we see today, our Ummah is only getting closer to the victory of Allah. With each passing day, the colonialist powers are losing time, while our Ummah is becoming more aware, more united, and more steadfast. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant us the victory when we are ready to lead humanity. So, let's prepare ourselves, inshallah. This January, join us at our annual Khilafah conference to explore vital questions and uncover the path forward, guided by our deen and hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's promise. Will you help shape the future of our Ummah?
Hizbut Tahrir's primary aim is the re-establishment of a global Islamic caliphate based on Sharia law, modeled after the early Islamic period. Now you might think, oh wait, I know all about the Islamic State group, ISIS. No, this is not ISIS. This is a different Islamic State group. These guys reject ISIS. We'll get into that later. For now, what you need to know is that HT advocates for the Islamic State using a supposedly non-violent ideological approach, using political activism, education, and engagement. These guys have been around as long as I can remember. Back in university, they would show up to Islamic talks and shout down the speaker, accusing them of being sellouts for not talking about what they felt was important, the Islamic State, Islamic law, etc. You see, Hizbut Tahrir promotes the view that Islam is all about the law, that 90% of Islam was legal rulings and not personal rulings like how to pray, but legal rulings on how much zakat you pay to the state and whatnot. That the most important thing Muhammad did was migrating from Mecca to Medina and then establishing the state. That a big reason why the ummah is suffering and all the problems exist in the world and all the cruelty and unfairness and all of the awful things can all be solved with this simple solution, the Khilafah. Talk about oversimplistic and delusional, as if all the problems in the world will go away by this magical Khilafah. A big part of HT's value system is the rejection of democracy, which they consider man-made laws. Their favorite expression is hukm shari, Islamic ruling, which they repeat over and over. They usually tell Muslims not to vote and to stay out of the kuffar's politics. This differs somewhat from what other Muslims believe, which is that getting involved can be a civic duty. So you can see they're divisive and try to disengage Muslims from the larger community and system. They actually state that getting involved in a democratic system in any way is a form of kufr, disbelief, and could mean you are out of Islam. I remember seeing hadith like this one that stated, "I am not responsible for any Muslim who stays among polytheists, and also I am free from every Muslim that lives among the idolaters." These are hadith that HT members use in order to try to psychologically control Muslims and make them feel that they need to join this group and that they are guilty and should feel shame for living among non-Muslims. They use these hadith and verses from the Quran like, "And whoever does not judge by what Allah has revealed, then it is they who are disbelievers." Kafirun 544. And it is not for a believing man or a believing woman, when Allah and His Messenger have decided a matter, that they should have any choice about their affair, and whosoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger has clearly strayed into clear error. 33-36. These teachings are too easy to find in Islam and are way too easy for groups like Hizbut Tahrir and of course ISIS and others to use to justify that Muslims need to be more hardcore and to follow them and to go into these groups and to establish Islamic law. HT has also been accused of promoting hostility towards non-Muslims with a very much us versus them mentality, extreme anti-Semitism and hatred towards Israel. They are no good for humanity or for society, where we have to live together in peace. Their goal has always been that Muslims need to move from the West and to Muslim countries and work there towards re-establishing the caliphate that will deal with the enemies of Allah once and for all. The only problem is that this group is now considered a terrorist entity, and they are banned in several countries including Germany, Russia, and many Muslim majority countries like Egypt, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and others for being a threat to national security. On top of that, finally some good news, the UK added them to the list as well. In January 2024, the UK government has prescribed that Hizbut Tahrir is a terrorist organization now. Well done on the UK for making this call. On the prescribed terrorist list, among the so many other Islamic terrorist groups, we have now Hizbut Tahrir. And they describe it, they say that it's an international Sunni Islamist political organization, right? The long-term goal, the stated long-term goal is to unify Muslims worldwide and establish a caliphate ruled under Islamic Sharia law. They also have assessed that Hizbut Tahrir, including its national branches, is currently concerned in terrorism and meets the promotes and encourages limb of the statutory test. A number of articles were posted online on Hizbut Tahrir's central media website and third-party websites attributed to several of the branches, which celebrated and praised the 7th October 2023 attack by Hamas and associated events. Contents of these articles, many of which refer to Hamas as heroes and encourage further terrorist activity, constitute the promotion and encouragement of terrorism. Those of you who were promoting the October 7th attacks be careful. You could be also associated with terrorism. You want to promote and praise Hamas, you're also going to end up on this list and going to be under the watchful eye of CSIS. Mazen Abdul Azim, the face of Hizbut Tahrir here in Ontario, wrote a tweet saying, "The UK government does not realize that by banning HT, they make us a much stronger force, impenetrable and absolutely bulletproof from the false allegations and lies. This will cause anger across the Muslim community, and the one thing they wished to prevent would come even closer to becoming an actual reality. This will not work out in their favor under any circumstance." I don't think there's any anger. Probably the opposite. Muslims are going to distance themselves from this group in order to not be potentially involved in terrorism. This post is pure cope. Let's hope Canada is next to ban them. Then they can scurry into the dark into other countries and leave us alone here in Canada. We don't want them. I debated with this guy on Facebook several years ago when he lived in London, Ontario, and I was leaving Islam. He is apparently a disciple of Majid Nawaz, who used to be in HT as well. Mazen ended up blocking me after I called him out, this is probably in 2016, for living in the West while talking shit about it nonstop. That somehow got under his skin. One of his last words to me was that I am an enemy of Allah, I will end up destitute, homeless, addicted to drugs, and living in the gutter. Apparently all because I'm ex-Muslim. Apparently he's become even more radicalized now, and he's openly calling for Muslims to rise up and overthrow governments.
After Bismillah, this is a call to the armies of the Muslim lands. We know with almost 100% certainty that within the ranks of the armies right now, throughout the Muslim lands, there is unseen frustration and struggle to maintain order within the ranks unlike anything that we've ever seen before. You within the ranks of the armies in the Muslim lands know how much this is happening. We all know how much you're struggling with the fact that you're sitting there, unable to move forward and liberate the Muslims of Palestine. We know how angry you are at the fact that the governments of the Muslim lands are holding you back and disallowing you from protecting your Muslim brothers. You know as well as we do the ayah in the Quran where Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَإِنِ اسْتَنْصَرُوكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ فَعَلَيْكُمُ النَّصْرُ. If they call out for you for help, for military assistance, then you must go give them military assistance. This is your chance to become the Ansar of this age. This is your chance to gain the honor and the dignity of being the liberators of the land of Al-Aqsa and to
Interesting that here he is telling other people to go and throw their lives away and to sacrifice themselves for someone else's cause. Because in his eyes, the ummah is united, so they should all work together. Imagine living in one of these Muslim countries, maybe Saudi, maybe in the Saudi army, and hearing this guy tell you to overthrow your government and to go fight in Palestine. Like, imagine how nuts this is. So you're starting to see why these guys are banned in Muslim countries, right?
defend the blood of your Muslims. This is the struggle that will change all other struggles, that will define all other struggles. I call upon all the Muslims in the armies in the Muslim lands to break free of the shackles that are holding you back from assisting your Muslim brothers and sisters and coming to the call of your Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the time to break away from the ranks. This is the time to rebel against your leaders. This is the time to overthrow your government. This is the time to bring about change, the change that everyone is dying for. When the Muslims are calling out, free Palestine in the streets, they're not talking to the West. The West is not going to free Palestine. Egypt is not going to free Palestine. Jordan is not going to free Palestine. Erdogan is not going to free Palestine. Mohammed bin Salman is not going to free Palestine. None of these traitors, these sellouts who have sat there watching their Muslim brothers and sisters and the children die in the thousands and they're doing absolutely nothing about it. None of them are going to come and free Palestine. But you will. The Muslim Ummah will. The people who are going to free and liberate Palestine will be the sincere Muslims of this Ummah, and they will be given the honor in the dunya and in the akhirah for playing a role in this. You have an opportunity of a lifetime. It is time that we understand that the people of Palestine have no one else other than you, the military of the Muslims. Allah Azza wa Jal is not going to bring a miracle out of the sky to liberate Palestine. Allah Azza wa Jal is teaching us that we have to do it ourselves, and nobody is going to come and help Palestine. Nobody except for you. And I call on all Muslims who have watched this video to make a video just like it. It doesn't matter if you're not articulate. It doesn't matter if you don't know what to say. It doesn't matter if you've never made a video before. Make a video saying the same thing. Let the armies of the Muslim lands know we all stand with the armies of the Ummah. We all stand with the people of Palestine. I call everybody to start a campaign to make videos where we call the armies of the Muslim lands to do something. This is what we must do. Going out into the streets and calling out to who are we even calling out to? We're not calling out to anybody. We're just calling out. So why don't we do something practical? Why don't we do something real? Make videos where we speak to the armies of the Muslim lands, because who are the members of these armies? The members of these armies are our brothers and our uncles and our fathers and our family. These are Muslims who are from us, of us. Once these armies break free of these shackles, then change will happen. Only through this will change happen. We must unite the armies of the Muslim lands under a single Khalifa that will implement Islam and earn the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal, and the victory of Allah Azza wa Jal will come through this. If we seek it through any other way, through nationalistic solutions or UN resolutions or international law, or begging the West for scraps of mercy, or begging the Arab tyrants and enemies of Allah for scraps of mercy, which they will never give us, then we're simply waiting for nothing. Only through the Khilafah will Allah Azza wa Jal save us. Make the video now. And again, to the armies of the Muslim lands, be the Ansar of this age.
Remember I said how simplistic and delusional they are about how the world works? Oh, we don't need international law. We don't need UN resolutions. We don't need the tyrants of the Muslims. We don't need these Muslim tyrant rulers. We can just make a Khilafah and all the problems will go away. Imagine telling them, and you know what? I'm going to do exactly what he said. I'm going to make a video for the Muslim armies. Hey guys, if you're watching this video, don't listen to this egghead. Don't do anything different. Don't rise up against your leader and end up in jail, because that's not going to solve the problem of Palestine. The problem of Palestine is not going to be solved by violent means, because it's a complicated matter that needs people to cooperate and work together to solve things. It needs people to see past the current struggle and the current rage and the hatred they have for each other. It needs forgiveness. It needs compassion. It needs a broader view of what the future can look like. And it's not going to happen with this nonsense that's this guy's saying right here. And what do you think would happen if this actually became true? What do you think would happen to the Jews? Do you really think they'd have the same rights or any right? Do you think they'd even exist? Just look at what Muhammad did to the Jews of Arabia. This is the reality that you'll end up with. Now, why do you think the RCMP was worried about radicalization? Because of people like this. Why do you think these guys are banned in Muslim countries? Because look what he's openly calling for now. If he was in any of those Muslim countries, he would be in jail right now for like this insidious sort of statements that he's making. And even though Hizbut Tahrir aren't openly jihadist right now, like they are considered terrorists because of the promotion of terrorism, but they don't actively themselves go out and say we should blow up things. Article 62 of the Hizbut Tahrir constitution also calls for compulsory conscription in the sought-after caliphate. It states that every Muslim male who is 15 years and over is obliged to undergo military training in readiness for jihad. The meaning of jihad being a duty of sufficiency is that we initiate the fighting of the enemy even if he did not attack us. If the Muslims failed to initiate the fighting at any given time, they would all be sinful. That's a quote from the Constitution. You realize that if these people are successful and they bring about the caliphate, people like me would be executed or even assassinated, like Muhammad assassinated Ka'b bin Ashraf. Every year, Hizbut Tahrir has been hosting a conference in Mississauga and the Living Arts Center or other places. For example, this post in 2015 said, make sure you attend the annual Hizbut Tahrir Rajab conference this year in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. It takes place on May 23rd at the Living Arts Center from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. in preparation for the real Khilafah, Caliphate, which will be on the footsteps of the Prophet, inshallah. The agenda-driven media has turned up the rhetoric against the Khilafah and the systems of Islam. What can we do about this? We as an ummah must take ownership of the future Khilafah and take an active role in refuting this propaganda. We must talk to our families, neighbors, colleagues, and friends to make them aware of what a real Khilafah looks like. Join us on May 23rd to get the necessary knowledge and to take an active role in the re-establishment of the Khilafah. That's what they posted. The interesting thing is, you can see that they're working hard to convince Muslims that political Islam is the solution. They're accusing these other people of spreading lies and fighting against them. It's because these guys are a scourge on the Muslim Ummah, and even other Muslims sometimes don't like them because of how political they are. I personally know many people that fell into Hizbut Tahrir and their simplistic thinking, and how, this, including myself to some extent, I believe that this makes sense. The Muslim Khilafah will actually bring justice to the world. Now, of course, ironically, justice would include the future me being executed. So much for justice. LGBT would have also had a really tough time, right? Minorities, right? Jews. But I learned from my mistakes. I realized what a scummy worldview Islam has, and obviously Hizbut Tahrir. This year, however, something changed. The conference keeps moving. Last year, they cancelled it after the UK called it a terrorist entity. As you can see here in this article, the Islamic group calling for Sharia law cancels Canadian event after UK declares a terrorist entity. Basically, they got spooked and they decided to cancel the event, right? And, many people are calling on Canada to do the same thing. But this year, they're back. They announced it in Mississauga, and then after a lot of pressure, they decided to move it. The mayor of Mississauga had this to say: "It appears that Hizbut Tahrir conference of extremists had been moved to another city location in Hamilton to be decided. I'm pleased that the peaceful and respectful residents of Mississauga would not have to endure the fallout." So this poor mayor is struggling because she's getting a lot of pressure from both sides, and even some annoying people are actually pushing back on her and trying to tell her that, how dare you do this or whatever, right? So this is why we need to support people that are actually fighting for the right cause, right? So anyways, because of the pressure, she actually made some threats about, if we find this conference, we're going to cancel it, whatever. And then they caved in and they moved to another city, Hamilton. And then the Hamilton mayor, Andrea Horwath, has also made a statement. "It's come to my attention there's a planned event in Hamilton which has raised significant concerns for me and my community. Since learning of this event, I've been in direct communication with the Halton Police Service, who are closely monitoring the situation to ensure public safety." Okay? So basically, the city of Hamilton enforces strict conditions for all groups or organizations seeking to rent city facilities. "We unequivocally refuse access to any group that engages in or promotes hatred or any form of divisive behavior. As clearly outlined in City of Hamilton's whatever policy, if such actions are reported or reasonably suspected, permits will be denied or immediately revoked, and appropriate measures will be taken to address the situation," right? So basically, I've consistently spoken out against hate in all its forms and continue to do so unequivocally. There's absolutely no place in our city for individuals or groups spreading messages of division or intolerance. Hamilton will always stand against hate and for the values that bring us together. This is great. Right? I'm really happy to see this. Thankfully, things are changing. I hope they're forced to operate online and not in person. We don't need more young or old Muslims indoctrinated in these hateful, antagonistic views. In conclusion, people are waking up to the reality of just how bad these Islamist groups are. We need to keep up the pressure. This group usually doesn't openly call for violence. Instead, what they do is operate in countries quietly and promote their hateful views under the radar while rallying more to the cause. These groups operate as a soft base for terrorism because they all have the same goals, just different methods. If we believe in freedom and liberty, we can't allow these toxic organizations to use our freedom to spread and then take away our very freedoms that they used. If these groups had their way, people like me would not just be silenced but terminated, as in dead. They openly call people like me enemies of Allah. If they got their way, it wouldn't be good. This is why we need people to know who these guys are and put them in the spotlight. They shouldn't be allowed to operate under the radar because they are a scourge for our society. Kudos on the UK last year for classifying them as a terrorist group. I hope Canada is next. Let's keep up the pressure, and thanks for watching. If you liked this video, do join the Patreon, subscribe now. Thank you for watching. I'm going to be making more such videos on this topic and other such topics related to Islam. This is your friendly ex-Muslim Abdullah Samir signing out.